Hey, welcome back to the channel. Got a Happymodel Diamond F4 flight controller. This is a 1S all-in-one Whoop flight controller, and it has the ELRS built-in SPI receiver. So this is Happymodel's offering as a 5-in-1, like a really light Whoop flight controller. This is not my first go-around with the Diamond. I actually have one right here. So I built this quadcopter up and I took it to a race and I was all excited and it flew like hot garbage. It was absolutely horrendous. I did not enjoy myself at all. This thing went through batteries like it was nothing. It just bobbled all over the place. Had all kinds of things going on. So the next race, downloaded somebody else's tune information. I actually replaced a couple motors. I really went at this thing trying to think, you know, it's gotta be the board, right? There's something wrong. So I ordered another Diamond and built this up. I actually have filmed this now twice. This is my second time filming this whole video because the first one had an internal short, and I just don't think it's fair to go through this whole process and have an end result that didn't work out. So Happymodel sent me out another flight controller. So I got some things that we need to go through to make sure that what I went through don't happen to you. I'm really surprised about the firmware that I found on the stock board. Things are not working right. So I went through a whole process, did some research. I've got some information here. We're going to go through some stuff in BetaFlight. We're going to make sure that we're on the same page. Because if we're not on the same page, then following this video is not going to be a good idea for you. I have an outline. I plan on putting it in the description so you can have some hyperlinks to get this information. So if you follow the video all the way through, you'll go down in the description and you'll know exactly what all this means. So this one here, after doing this whole process, is flying like butter. I mean, it's really doing a good job for me. So I'm excited to get this one going. This video, I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail as far as like soldering the board up and building an entire quad, even though that's exactly what I plan on doing. I have some awesome purple props. I got all my screws and my frame, the flight controller, the camera, the canopy. All this is going to go together. I'm going to fly it and I'm going to make sure that everything is just right before I post this video. But this video is going to go to BetaFlight, and we're going to go to BlueJay ESC Firmware, and we're going to get this done. So there's quite a process to go through to get it done, and I'm going to show you why it's not right from the factory. There's just something off, okay? So that's what this video is about, so stay tuned. So I have my notes off to the side. I've got my new flight controller. We're going to do some things to this real quick on the bench before we get into BetaFlight. I really think it's going to help you out in the long run if you do these few things before you get started, especially getting in the soldering and everything. This little dude's ripping around pretty good. I can finally retire my old FR Sky D8 receiver that likes to fail safe all over the place. And we'll get this thing out of the way. And we'll get this stuff out of the way. I'm excited to build this thing up. The first thing I would say you're going to want to check out when you open this thing up. Ain't much for padding. You'd think they'd have another piece in there. Another piece in there. So I guess there's a sticker. And there's a little QR code right here to figure out how to do what you're supposed to do. And then they give you a pH 2.0 connector. All of my stuff is now BT 2.0. If you have any question, how do I get that on the end of my lipo or on the end of my quadcopter? I actually just did a video on how to do that. So we're not gonna use this connector. And I have all the pieces and parts already that I need for this build, so we can get rid of this box. Now, with this flight controller, the first thing that we need to do is we're going to do a continuity check, because I already have one right here that went bad on me. And after doing lots of video and pictures and proofing to Happymodel, they sent me a new one. So let me show you what's wrong with this one, and we're going to go through this one real quick. So you're going to need a multimeter. I have lots of stuff in a playlist on the multimeter, so you can see how to use one if you're not familiar. But you're going to go to continuity. I like this multimeter. I like to use this one because it's really cheap on Amazon, and it's really a nice multimeter. And I've checked it against 2 other multimeters, and it's doing pretty good. Make sure that you're getting a tone. And then from this board here, if we turn it like so, this pad right here is ground. So if I were to hold my lead there, and then I go around to my motor poles, everything seems to be fine. Okay? So we go all the way around, oops, right there. And then we go to motor, this is motor 1 right here. So we go to the first, the second pole, and the third pole. There's 43 ohms of continuity from ground to motor pole. So that's, I mean, that's pretty much a short. 43 ohms is nothing. And then right here, we have continuity of 30 ohms from ground to hot. This flight controller actually flew. The quad would hover, but it would desync, flip around, and do all kinds of bad things. So this thing is hot garbage. So I'll go ahead and get him out of the way. So the first thing we want to do with our brand new one, if you want, you can take and put your ground lead right here on the outside of the USB, and you can check right here to make sure, yes, indeed, you have ground. And then you're going to go over to the hot, and we should get a little bit of a tone, a little bit of continuity. There's a lot of capacitors on here. All right, didn't get any there. And then we're going to go around and we're going to check all of our motor poles to make sure there's no short inside, because that is super frustrating. All right, so they all checked out. We're going to go between hot and ground right here. All checked out, same thing as what we just did with the USB. All right, so next we just want to check our camera. We want to make sure that, let me go ahead and get the camera here, and we'll just kind of plug it in temporarily so we know which wires. So on the back of the little Molex here, we have a ground, 5 volt, and our signal. So we shouldn't get any continuity between 5 volt. So we should have full continuity to the ground, no continuity to the 5 volt, and then we would have like a fair amount of ohms for the camera. So let's go ahead and pull this off. Go ahead and put our ground here. You can put it right here if you want, if it makes it easier, but see how the board tilts. Just for filming, I'm going to put it right here. So we should have ground continuity. We should not have any continuity, just for a second there, just for those capacitors to charge up. And then the camera should get something, but no beeping. 75.7 ohms, okay? So that seems pretty natural and normal. All right, that's in a nutshell. I don't want to make this video like super long, but I think if you do that, that's going to save you a ton of misery if your board, like mine, was shorted out. So basically the ground 5 volt and motor 1, like this whole edge of the board was just all continuity, like full continuity. So now we check this out. Looks like everything's going to be all right. Go ahead and shut that off. Everything we're going to do in this video is going to be in BetaFlight, and then we're just going to jump into BlueJay ESC Firmware, and I'll tell you why once we get in it. So the rest of this is on the computer. Now here's the thing. When you plug this in, this thing is going to broadcast. The VTX is going to initiate. So the power to the VTX is going to happen. My advice is to get a fan. So unfortunately, I'll be having this fan noise in the background. And so I'll have this plugged into the computer, and I'll have my fan over here running on this thing to keep it cool. If you don't have a way to keep it cool or a fan, then I would advise you to kind of make sure that you're checking on this. So you'll do one thing. Once that's completed, unplug, let it cool down, and then continue on. And this is all the information that we're going to go through. All right. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into BetaFlight and get this done. I have my fan turned on. Sorry, we're going to have that background noise the whole time. I'm going to go ahead and plug in the flight controller. And we should see a COM port pop up here. And we do, so go ahead and connect. And you'll want to go to Setup Screen. And the first thing you want to do is just kind of move your flight controller around. Nothing's plugged into it except for the USB cable, so that's it. If you hold your flight controller nice and flat and hold it to where it's facing the PC, if you have a laptop, just have it facing nice and straight and level as you can. Come over here and straighten that up, and then forward, right, left, back, forward, so you can see it's moving around pretty good. If your quadcopter is not doing that, like it's not moving at all, so if you're moving it around and nothing's happening, or you're moving it rapidly around and the quadcopter is doing this real slow, you have other issues. You can't continue with this tutorial. A lot of times if it's moving really slow, it's just got some accelerometer problems. You just hold the flight controller super flat as you can, and you'll calibrate the accelerometer. Holding it against the table as flat and smooth as you can, and then it'll get rocking again. So I'm going to go ahead and put this back in front of the fan. Alright, and then the next thing we want to do is just come down here to Motors tab. I want to show you something. So on the other one, same thing, same scenario. Bidirectional D-shot was enabled. However, the ESC firmware was just stock BLRS firmware. That's not going to work. I mean, you'll have 100% packet errors. So if you plug a lipo into your quadcopter, this should all go to zeros. There shouldn't be any errors of the RPM filtering packets going back and forth. So this was 100% error because the bidirectional D-shot being enabled from the factory without the correct ESC firmware. You get my drift? So this thing isn't going to fly very good. I don't care what tune you put on it. So I found that to be kind of odd. And then in configuration, we have the gyro update frequency and PID loop frequency. I have yet to get Happymodel to answer my question, but in looking at other things on Facebook and all of that, the 3232 is kind of what people are saying. But right now we don't want to get into messing with any of this. We just want to look at a couple things that are just kind of out of whack, okay? And then if we go to PID tuning, I'm not saving anything. We're going to blast this firmware off anyway. The other thing is ELRS, we're running 250 or 500 packet rate. So I know I'm running 500 hertz, so that's 500 packets per second of information flow between the built-in receiver and the transmitter. Well, this information here is not going to work out. You're going to have some issues there too. This thing really doesn't seem like it's ready to go out of the box, which is frustrating. The VTX, it looks like the VTX was set up. We'll re-download this VTX table anyway. Let's go ahead and get started with, so the first thing in preparation, we want to copy and paste the dump file. So go ahead and type in dump, hit enter, and all the information for the stock flight controller, the way it is, this is the dump file. All the information is right here. Make a copy of it. So go ahead and grab a hold of the bottom here and go ahead and slide it all the way up. And you're going to grab all this info before you get started. So that way you can, right to there, and then copy to clipboard. And then go ahead and paste that into a note file so that you have this for future. The one thing you want to pay attention to here is version. So this is something we want to make sure that we have the Crazy Bee F4 SX 1280. And they have 4.30. I'm going to go 431 with the update, but we want to make sure this information right here is our target. So when we flash the firmware, we want to make sure that this is the correct target. Okay, so that's all taken care of. We have our dump file, and if we need to, we can go to this target, we can go to this version, and we can download that, and we can dump this dump the dump file back in the CLI and save it, and it'll be back to stock. We're not going to do that though. So the next thing we want to do is make sure that we're on the same page. Is we want to go in here and type in status. And in status, you're going to see this little report pop up. Okay, so this is going to have all your arming flags. So if you ever have an issue with any, let me see if I can grab that correctly for you here. Oh my goodness. Alright, so status is what's come up. And if ever you have an issue where you cannot arm your quadcopter, you can always come here and it'll give you all the arming issues. The other thing we want to do is we want to look right here. If you're in the status information right here, so in status, gyro, BMI270, accelerometer, BMI270. If this information is different, stop. I apologize for wasting your time. All this information is centric around this BMI270 gyro and getting this thing straightened out. So I'm going to go ahead and continue. We're going to assume that you have the BMI270 on your flight controller. So we're done in here. We've copied, we've pasted our original dump file, so we got that saved. We've verified that the gyro and accelerometer information is the same, so we're on the same page, and we're not going to go off and do anything crazy. So we're going to disconnect. Now I'm going to unplug the flight controller. On the flight controller, now you can get into DFU mode in several different ways. I guess call me old school. There's a boot button. It's basically right next to the USB port. I like to use something that, something that's not sharp, not metal. And I want to hold down, so I'm going to put the flight controller on the table here, and I'm going to hold down on that boot button. There's one in the center, but that's the bind button. So the boot button is just right next to the USB port, and I'm just going to depress that little tiny button, and that's going to initiate the boot. And then I'll plug in the flight controller while holding that down, and then I'll let go of it as soon as you hear BetaFlight kick up. I'm going to go ahead and put this in front of the fan again. You really got to watch it. That VTX will burn up on you. Alright, so that's secured. So now you can see here we're in DFU mode. So we're in bootloader mode. Go into update, and then we're going to load up the correct firmware. Now they do on the website, let me pull that up for you real quick. So on Happymodel's website, they do have a hex file, so you can come in here, ELRS version or FR Sky version. We're dealing with the ELRS version, and we have the BMI, be mindful here, the BMI 270. I'm going to put a hyperlink in the description for you so you can get to this area. But BetaFlight 4.30, so that's the hex file that they have. I'm going to go 4.31 because I don't think they've updated their website. So I'm going to go ahead and ignore this hex file, and we're going to load our own. So let's go back to BetaFlight. So we have the correct target, Crazy BF4SX 1280, and we have the correct firmware. I'm wanting to go to 4.31. I'm going to do a full chip erase, and everything else looks pretty good. So we're going to load the firmware, and after loading the firmware, you're going to get like a GitHub notation here, so improvements, some things that they've done to fix issues. So that's good. And then we'll scroll down here and we'll go ahead and flash firmware. You want to make sure that your computer is, if you're using a laptop, make sure your battery's good to go, and make sure your USB cable don't accidentally come unplugged. Some people like to fast forward through this and edit it out. I like you to see exactly how long it took me, so that if there's a discrepancy there, I mean, obviously your Wi-Fi and processor speed of your computer is going to take into play there, but we'll just kind of get through this together. So after we download, we download the flash, and we get our hex file all buttoned up. All right, programming successful. We want to come up here to connect. We want to go, we're going to leave bootloader, oh my goodness, bootloader, and we're going to go into our COM port, and we're going to connect. And the first thing it's going to say is apply custom defaults. We definitely want that. We want the defaults of the board, the pinouts, and all that stuff to kind of come into play. So now we can go ahead and connect into the quadcopter. You're going to get a warning because we haven't set up the motors tab, we haven't set up other things, we haven't leveled the board and done the accelerometer. So that's all these things that we'll end up doing. First thing we'll do is go to the setup screen. We're just going to make sure that our quadcopter rotates, and we're going to do an accelerometer. So we're going to come in here. See how slow I'm wiggling back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. See how this thing is like really moving slow? So hold your flight controller nice and flat. Hold the front edge, the large flat front edge towards your PC, and we're going to calibrate the accelerometer. Get that all buttoned up. Now look at it. See what I mean? And then we're going to come over here and we're going to correct. So we have pitch forward, pitch back, right, left. Do you notice that this is not the correct orientation? So we will have to turn this. So if you look at, we're pitching forward, but we're going to the left. Okay, if we pitch to the right, we go forward. So it's one step out of whack. If we pitch back, it goes to the right, and we pitch to the left, it goes back. So we need to rotate, or actually we need to counterclockwise the gyro one time, one turn. Okay, so let's go ahead and just check ports real quick. And nothing is, the SPI built-in receiver, there's nothing here. But we want to initiate our smart audio. If you don't initiate this, your VTX table is not going to work. You're not going to be able to use remote in and change your VTX settings. Your VTX is not going to initiate correctly. So we're going to go ahead and save and reboot. And in this point in time, I'm going to go ahead and click Auto Connect. So we'll come back there. See, there's still more warnings. We've already took care of one of them. And then that's stuck. We'll just make sure that that's still stuck. I know that UR2 has the VTX on. I just want to do this real quick. I'm flying 300 milliamp, and then here the max voltage, so I don't have this stupid warning in my screen. My last heat of the United States Air Force Museum race, I didn't have this set correctly, and my lipo was charged over the value, and it flashed land now the entire race of my last heat, the last bracket. I'm not going to say, I'm not making an excuse that's why I lost, but it was really annoying to have that happen. So go ahead and change that now. I'd like to be warned at 3.5. Minimum cell, it's kind of like a critical warning, 3.3. I'm good with that. I really don't like crashing my, lipos. So I'm going to go ahead and save that information. And then in here we have diff files. Okay, before we go any further with BetaFlight, there's some diff files in here. So now if you look at your board, okay, there's some it's kind of gold print, and on that flight controller it's gonna say, mine says Diamond ELRS V4.3, and that's on the long flat side. So we're gonna click on this information, and it's kind of nice. They just give you a file to dump in. No, I don't want Mobeetle as my name. I do want my resources correct. Telemetry I want turned on. Serial ports correct. Beeper beacon. I could kind of go without that. It doesn't matter. I do use the Spectrum, the TAER, so I still use that in my mapping for channel and my receiver. And we're not going to go through all this stuff, but look at this. It has the entire VTX table for you, so you don't have to go search around for that. Let's go ahead and scroll all the way down. And if you save, okay, if you copy all this down and you go to that save right there, it will automatically do it. It will, as soon as you dump this in CLI, it will automatically save it and close it. If you don't want it to do that, then don't go that far. You'll have to put in save yourself. But I'm going to do that because it's just convenient. So I'm going to copy this. We're going to go over to BetaFlight, and we're going to go into CLI, and we're going to paste. So I'm just going to paste that. Now look at this. Nothing happened. See how it says save right there? All the information's loaded. As soon as we hit enter, it will load everything up on this page, but because save, simply the word save is on there, it's going to blow it all in there, and then it's going to close BetaFlight, and it'll be done. So I'm going to hit enter. Alright, so everything is done. Let's go back to configuration. We still have our information here. We still have our information here, so that hasn't changed. This board comes stock with the word Mobeetle as the name, and we all know that that's not going to fly. 180 degrees is already done for you. We're just going to come in here. We're going to make sure that we click on telemetry, because this ESC, this receiver, the built-in ELRS SPI receiver is awesome. It has telemetry data coming from it. I do not want air mode on. I don't fly my whoops with air mode on. When I bang into stuff, I don't want it, going berserk or going wild on me. And then you can turn off all these beepers that you don't use. You don't have a GPS. You don't have some of this other stuff in here. Black box data. You don't have that. So once we get this set up here, everything looks all right. We're going to go ahead and save and reboot. And now it's time to go to the preset. So I'm going to look over at my notes here before I get too carried away. So, the other thing I want to show you real quick is the VTX, the table, it automatically loaded this. So right now is a great opportunity to come in here and change whatever race band to, and change this to race. Okay, you can change it to 25 if you want. Race is good because it doesn't power up until it's armed. Once it's armed, it'll go to 25. So that works out pretty good. I'm going to run it at 25 because I'm going to check the camera here in a second, and I'm going to save. So right now you've seen that the file that Happymodel has created, this diff file for this particular board, had this thing on 400. So you don't want that. That thing's going to burn up on your bench really quick. So knock that down. You can take it to 0 if you want, and it won't output anything. So while we're working on the bench, it's good to have it on a low setting. And how do you know that worked? The device is ready. Yes. The reason why it's working is because we came into our ports tab and initiated it. If you didn't have that, then when you go here, this is going to say no. All right. So now it says yes. So that means we can use our sticks to adjust our stuff. Okay. So everything's saved. We're 25 milliwatt. The other thing is, if you don't have a preloaded VTX table, you can just go up here to this page, and this page is going to open up a website. So this website opens up, and this is the GitHub for the smart audio and tramp protocols. So you can come in here and you can get the correct one. So if yours is smart audio 2.0, you can just right click on that and save as, and it'll be a JSON file, and you can save that to your desktop, and then you can load it into BetaFlight. So when you go into BetaFlight, you can just say load from file, and then just grab that file and put it in. We didn't have to do that because the diff file had it in it already. So the next step, I introduced the smart audio GitHub page to you. We did the copy paste of the diff file. Next thing we need to do is preload. So we have our presets. We're going to come up here to RC link, and this is the one I'm going to use. Okay, if you're using 250 packet rate because you have an older radio or you're running OpenTX, you have to use a smaller baud rate instead of the 400K. I don't really want to get into all that in this video. This is more like a follow along and do the same settings kind of thing. But if you have to use a lower baud rate, you have to use a lower packet rate. You can't run 250 packets of information sent to this thing every second. I'm running 400K, 500 hertz, so I'm running 500 packets a second between the transmitter and the receiver. So this is the one I want to choose. I'm going to click on it, and we're going to race. So this is, if I choose this is going to add some other settings, and I'll show you that here in a second what that changed. The other thing is we want to definitely make sure that you have that clicked, because we're using a built-in SPI receiver. There's other settings that go in play to make that work correctly. And voltage display, single cell value is good for me. I don't care about this. So we have these things set up, and that should get us quick response. We're not going to be able to fly super far away, but I'm going to pick it, and then when I save and reboot it, it'll apply it. Alright, so that has changed some things, and we can simply go into the receiver, and it took care, it did all the stuff that we needed to do here. And then if you're used to FR Sky, you might have this enabled. Make sure this is disabled. You're going to have link quality and your RSSdbm showing up in your FPV feed. If this is enabled for like channel 8 or 12 or whatever you're used to with FR Sky, it's not going to work. So make sure this is disabled. But everything in here looks pretty good. I'm not going to get into setting up a model and doing all the stick movements and all that stuff. This is just simply getting the correct firmware on this board so we can actually build this thing. Let me see here. What's next? So load the 500. Look at the PIDs. Oh yeah, look at the PIDs. So this is another thing that it changed. Right here, see 3? So 3, if you look here, there's a nice little spot here. I tell you what, BetaFlight has come such a long way over the years. It's just amazing. You don't even have to really mess with CLI anymore. But if you read here, default is 7. Higher values, 10 and 12 are good for cinema. 5 is good for racing. So the race link, the speed, and then here's 65. So right here it says for 500 hertz links, they're telling you use 60 to 65. So when you do that preset for race, remember we clicked on race instead of like cinema and all the other choices, it gave us the most extreme profile here. This will keep the quadcopter from, I don't know how to explain it, like if you're moving your thumb 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, okay, if you're, you know, changing your roll in increments, instead of, if this is incorrect, you're not going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You're going to go 1, 2, 5, 7, 8, 10. You know what I mean? I think that's the best way it was explained to me. All right, so after that, we can look at the other things that we have here. Master sliders, pretty much any tuning. Probably use the sliders. It's just easier for something this small anyway. The rates, I do like to change the rates, but I want to fly it first, so I'll kind of fly it and then I'll, you know, speed or slow down something like, yeah, I want to probably have that at like 115 or something. I'll have to mess with this stuff once I fly it. But in here, angle, and we have angle strength. This is something that this is a preference. Imagine a rubber band. So when you move your stick back and forth, how does the quad react in the air? And imagine a rubber band attached to it. So when you're pushing your stick to pitch forward or to pitch back, and you come back off of that movement, how much force do you want that quadcopter to move? Do you want it to move real hard back to center? Do you want it to move really nice and smooth and easy? I do like my quads a little bit loose, if you will. I'm going to change this to 38. I may even go 32 later. And then angle limit, 55 degrees. So you can imagine your quadcopter tilted at 55 degrees maximum. I like more of an acro feeling, so I'm going to go to 71. The only thing is, keep in mind that you're going to get a little flutter when you're really gassing down the straightaways. You may get a little flutter from the prop guards. So this is preference. This is my opinion, personal. This is what I do. You can leave this stock and fly it and see what you think and change it later and feel it out for yourself. But I'm going to go ahead and save this since we made some changes. Look at my notes here. So we went through angle strength, PIDs for jitter changed. Okay, rates set up for, okay, this is done. Everything that I can think of is done firmware wise. We just need to go to motors tab. Come on. All right, so we're over here at the motors tab. Real quick here, looks like D-Shot 300 motor stop. You know, if you follow my channel, you know that motor stop, I usually enable motor stop on all my quads because I like when I pull the throttle all the way down, I want the motors to stop. But I'm also pulling air mode off on a switch. So that's how that works. In this case, you know, I've disabled air mode because I don't use it on the whoops. And I don't want to enable the motor stop because if you do no air mode, you know, air mode up here, if you disable this and then you enable this, when you drop your throttle to go through a gate or something, it's just gonna bobble and hit the floor. I mean, it's not gonna work out. So we're not gonna mess with this. I do want bidirectional D-shot on, but if you notice, this is kind of interesting because the board is shipped to you with this enabled with the wrong ESC firmware. Here's a screenshot of the ESC firmware of the board shipped that way. So as you can see, it's just BOLES firmware. It's not even capable of running the bidirectional D-shot, RPM filtering, and stuff. So that's kind of, I don't know. It seems frustrating to me, but I do want to enable this. I want bidirectional D-shot. I want the RPM filtering and the notch filters to change. So I'm going to go ahead and enable this, and then I'm going to agree that the filters and stuff is going to change. So yes. Here's the thing, I have to go into BlueJay and modify my ESCs. I still need to build the quadcopter because you have to solder a pigtail or a lipo, plug onto the board. So I don't have that done yet, so I'm not able to update the ESCs because I have to plug in a lipo. So I think right now I'm just going to pause. For you, it's going to be like instantaneous, but I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to jump to the bench, I'm going to build this quad, I'm going to fly it, and I'm going to come back and finish this tutorial because there's a few more things we need to do to make this thing sweet. So go ahead and save and reboot. And just to show you real quick before I get to building in the filters, so you can see here that it's turned on the gyro RPM filter. So this wasn't available before. So that's taken care of. So let me go ahead and I'll jump to the bench real quick and build this, and I'll be right back. Alright, so I'm back. That was fun. The solder pads actually aren't too bad on this because I've actually soldered motors directly to the original Happymodel F4 FR light board, and those pins are really tight together, so it's kind of nice to give you a little bit of space. I checked continuity, plugged in a lipo, gave it a rip, and I'm going to tell you right now, it is a totally different animal. The thing is really doing well. There's one thing I wanted to show you here. I had to go clockwise 90 degrees on the gyro to get that to fly correctly, and then I'm going to set this back to 160 because Happymodel got back to me at like 1 something in the morning. That's what they're recommending, so that's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to turn off these beepers. Alright, and the next thing we need to do in BetaFlight before I show you the ESC firmware is I need to go into Motors tab with the lipo plugged in. I have bidirectional D-shot enabled. I've got the correct ESC firmware already done. So this is kind of a wrap up when in the Motors tab is click on Reorder Motors, and you're gonna say yes, you have your props removed, and then when you start, it's gonna move each prop. You're gonna pick which one it is, okay, and then you're gonna save it, and then you're gonna go to motor direction, and you're gonna enable, yes, I've taken my props off. I like to use individual, and you hold down on this one and it'll spin number 1, and then it's saying in the system, it's saying it's supposed to go this way. So if it's not going that way, you can reverse it and then hold it down again and make sure that it's correctly rotating in this direction. And then motor 2, make sure it's correctly. You have to reorder your motors before you go in here, because you may click on number 1 and this one will spin. So that's why you have to do this one first. And then hold down on this, make sure it's in the right direction, and then once it's all done, just go ahead and close. And that will get all your motors in the correct position and spinning in the right direction. So that's pretty important to get that done. And then when you plug in a lipo, let me grab a lipo real quick. So we have our lipo plugged in, and as you can see here, all these went to 0 packet errors, so we don't have any packet errors. Before, with the stock firmware, you know, they had this enabled and they had the incorrect ESC firmware on it. This was 100% error the whole time. So, I don't know. I laugh because I'm frustrated, because I spent 2 full Friday night races just beating my head against the wall. You know, so all good. Everything looks good here. All right. So the next thing we want to do is we want to unplug that lipo. And we want to go over here to our OSD. And originally in that dump file, they have all kinds of garbage in here. I mean, you can hardly see through it all. And then I have quite a bit of stuff here because I like to know these values. If you rewatch your DVR, you can kind of see like what things we're doing. But I have my I'll just show you the list. I'm not going to go through and explain everything. But the one thing you want to do, coming from FrSky, link quality and RSSdbm value. Okay, so we're going to go over here and we're going to set up our warnings, and I'm going to set up the RSSdbm and the link quality. Now here's the thing. If you want see that low voltage right there, if you want it to say that you're losing link quality or you're losing your RSSdbm value, because that's how ELRS works. I don't really want to get into it in this video. I'm actually in the middle of editing another video going from FrSky to ELRS and what all it means. I'm actually editing that video. It's taken about 3 weeks worth of research and filming, and anyway, in here, if you go to this, you need to change something in CLI. Okay, so go ahead and make your changes. You can see my screen here. You can just do as I've done if you want, and then save. And then we're going to go to CLI, and we're going to type in get right here, and then hit enter. Now, the default value, I had to change this, is -60. The problem is with the built-in SPI ELRS receiver, a -60 is actually a pretty good number. And you go behind a few boxes in a stairwell or something, you're going to be at -60 or worse, because as this increases towards a whole number, you're going to be worse. You're just going to have this alarm flashing all the time. So you need to change it to this. So how to do that is grab this information. Now in your case it might be -60, so we're just going to copy that and then go down here and hit set and then paste. So set space and then paste, and then like yours will say -60. Okay, and then just delete that and put 100 and then hit enter, and then it will set that to -100, which is kind of -105 is probably going to fail safe. Your -110 is a fail safe. -20 is about as strong as a connection as you could possibly have. So -60 is pretty good. So that'll keep that alarm from annoying you and flashing in your OSD. Let me see here. What else is next? I think we just need to go to the firmware. I think we have everything else done in here to make this thing fly super awesome. So let me go ahead and disconnect here, and let's jump over. We have to close. Let me disconnect again and turn off auto connect. We have to get out of BetaFlight, so we need to close BetaFlight, and then we're going to the ESC firmware. Alright, so we're over here at the ESC firmware. This is a website, BlueJay. It works with BLES ESCs. And we're going to go ahead and plug this in. Now, I've already done this because I built the quad. I flew the quad. I'm making sure that it's doing its thing. So we're going to go ahead and plug in. Looks like we're all set up here. So connect. You can't do anything without a lipo, so we need to plug in our lipo. Alright, and we'll go ahead and read setup. Once you hear the chimes, the ESC chimes go off. Now, if you remember, the screenshot from the original firmware that was on here was BLES, this firmware. Now I've flashed and updated to this firmware, so our target OH5, that's a big deal. That's what ESC is in the quadcopter. So there's 4 of them, so each one of them OH5, and then now it tells you, you know, you're going to have like Jazz Mavic, or you'll have JESC. It'll identify, and in my case I flashed BlueJay, and then I'm up to version 16, so I flashed 16, and then you can choose, do you want 24 kilohertz, do you want 48 or 96? I've heard 96 is pretty efficient, right? But I've heard that it takes away from the grunt and the force of the blunt force of pushing that throttle up. So I'm running 48. I haven't gone to 96 to test it, so you can play with that if you want. But basically you just go here to flash all ESCs, and you're going to set this up. So BlueJay, you want to make sure this is correct, because if you don't put this in correctly, it's going to have a bad result. Version, I just went with the newest version, and here's where you can change to the different frequencies. I went with 48, and then if I hit flash, it's going to flash all 4 of them at the same time, and that's it. That's done. And then over here there's some parameters that you can mess with and change. I'm sure there's some more information that I need to learn about this, but the big deal is now that I can run the binary, the bidirectional D shot with RPM filtering, because this firmware can do it. Also, this is one of the few that you can do music, so you can do a music editor and have your quadcopter chime up and sing to you. I don't think the beacon strength's that good, and we have a radio playing at the race that's usually so loud you can't hear nothing anyway. So I think that's it. I really do. I think that's it. So if you do all of this, you're gonna have a really good running quadcopter. I'm sorry to even have to make this video. You'd think you could buy this board and slap it into a 65mm frame, throw some 0802 motors on it, and rip. Let's jump back over to BetaFlight and close this out. Alright, over here in BetaFlight, probably the only thing that I can think of that I might have to do is to go into my PIDs and change my P&I gains, because I'm running a different motor than what this Diff File's meant for. This Diff File's meant for the 0702 motors, I think, at 23,000 kV, and I'm running 0802 25,000 kV motors, so I'm going to have to do just a little bit of stuff, but for now I'm not really too concerned about it. So hey, you know, that's about all I can imagine. Now, you know, obviously if you're more advanced and you don't want to watch the whole video, which is too late, because if you're listening to me right now, you watch the whole thing. The outline and the description should have the hyperlinks to go where you need to go. So I really can't think of a better way to explain this. To try to tell somebody how to do this over the phone or through Facebook Messenger would be impossible. So this is everything that needs to be done. Everything needs to be changed. It's so sad that they can't just make this board come this way and work right out of the box, but it is what it is. So I hope this helped you out, and if it did, you know, give me a thumbs up, subscribe if you hated it, and you give me a thumbs down. It all works. Enjoy the breeze.